Here's a shocking statistic that will blow your mind. Did you know that throughout most of human history, the majority of humans never made it to the age of 20? I recently watched an incredible, eye-opening video from The Pursuit of Wonder, which really put a lot of things in perspective for me. In this video, he talks about how in ancient societies, life expectancies were as low as 10 years old because of the extreme child and infant mortality rates back then. Most people watching this video thought the exact same thing you or I probably did. It is an incredible miracle that science and technology has progressed to the point where living to 70 has now become the norm, and we should all be incredibly grateful to be alive in this day and age. There's certainly a lot of truth in this, and plenty to be grateful for every day. This is also a common sentiment I see from boomers and older generations when they insult Gen Z.
You ungrateful brats. You have no idea how good you have it compared to the majority of human history.
This is one way to look at it, and I guess it's not factually wrong. But what if we were to flip the script and look at it from a completely different perspective? A perspective from 1,000 years in the future instead of 1,000 years in the past. There have been incredible advancements in the field of life extension, and even hypothetical immortality in recent years. Scientists like Aubrey de Grey and David Sinclair posit that it's theoretically possible for a human to live 1,000 years, or even beyond. Sinclair has even said that it's possible that the first person to live to 250 years has already been born today. One thing that strikes me as a bit hilarious is that every era is arrogant enough to think they're the pinnacle of human civilization. And as a result, they always judge previous eras as backwards, barbaric, and primitive. For example, even the fact that we use the word modern civilization to describe ourselves, as if we're something special, and not realizing that every civilization was the modern civilization at the time they existed. If we're being honest, we all look back on previous eras and think the technologies, traditions, and mentalities they had were so backwards and primitive. So, I just have one question for you. What makes you think people 1,000 years from now won't look back at us in the same way? For example, going back to the Pursuit of Wonder video, we look back at ancient civilizations and think it was so brutal and tragic that the average life expectancy in some places was as low as 10. So, what happens when the life extension technology inevitably advances, and by the time the year 3000 rolls around, it will become normal for humans to live to 1,000 years old? You don't think they will look back on our time and say, it was so brutal and tragic that people died at 70 and almost no one lived to be 100? You don't think they will view our technology and understanding of the world to be just as primitive as we view the eras before us? Of course they will. You'd have to be incredibly arrogant and short-sighted to believe that we're going to be the first and only era of humanity exempt from this. This brings me to the title of this video. You guys know I have a lot of hope and see so much great potential in Gen Z today. This is essentially what this entire channel is all about. So this really made me wonder, how will future generations view Gen Z 50, 100, 1,000 years from now? Obviously, it's way too early to say. Gen Z is still very young and you're very much still writing your own story. We also don't know how history will play out from here. The technologies are very promising, but needless to say, we're living in very challenging times right now. So anything from utopia to the complete collapse of civilization is possible. But for sake of argument, let's assume the best case scenario. The book Chronicles of the Future is a fascinating book written by a man named Paul Dinac, who slipped into a year-long coma, and during this deep sleep, he claims to have had a time slip to the distant future, the year 3906. Now, whether you believe it was an actual time slip or just an extremely vivid lucid dream, no one knows, and it's impossible to prove one way or another. But regardless of whether it was real or not, his observations were very interesting. In fact, as I read the book, I realized people in the year 3906 actually have a very, very similar mindset to what Gen Z has today. Danac describes cultural and social norms being very, very different in 3906. The society is highly cooperative and less focused on material wealth. There's a significant emphasis on personal development, well-being, and the collective good. The economic system is completely different as well. Traditional economic systems based on currency and trade have been largely replaced by more efficient systems that focus on meeting needs rather than profit. There is a strong emphasis on personal growth and self-improvement. This society values intellectual and emotional development over material success. Perhaps the most shocking revelation of all was this. In the year 3906, people work only for a very short period, typically around 2 years, and then are free to pursue their passions and interests for the rest of their lives. This system is part of a broader economic and social model where the emphasis is on personal fulfillment and contributing to society in ways that align with individual passions and talents, not market economics. Now, if that doesn't sound Gen Z as fuck, I don't know what does. In fact, based on everything you just heard, you might think Paul Dinac is a modern-day Zoomer, projecting his own wishes into his own dreams, but you would be shocked to find out that this all actually happened in the year 1921, 76 years before the first Zoomer was born. Now again, we don't know, and it's impossible to prove if any of this is real. Here's what I do know, though. Humanity could get to this utopia if we get our act together and get through this trying time. I don't know if we will, but I know we can. Those are two very different things, unfortunately. But if we do eventually reach that utopian future described in this book, history will view Gen Z as a major turning point that led us there. Technology will absolutely advance us to a point one day where people don't have to work anymore. The only thing that could hold us back is if people's outdated mentalities around work and materialism don't change. But if there's anything that gives me hopium, it's that you Zoomers already have the same mentality as people in 3906. You guys are literally 2,000 years ahead of your time. When boomers tell you things like, "Oh, you spoiled brat, stop complaining," you have it exceptionally good by historical standards. This mentality is exactly why they ruined society for us. It's not supposed to be some exceptional privilege for younger generations to have a higher quality of life than older ones. You're supposed to try to make the world a better place for future generations. In fact, if you fail to do so, something's wrong with you. The boomers themselves are no exception to this. Their parents are the greatest generation, the generation that actually fought in the trenches in World War II. They are way more spoiled, lazy, and entitled compared to their parents than we are compared to them. When I was growing up, I faced this toxic rhetoric from my boomer parents and other boomers so much that I promised myself I would never be this way to younger generations when I grew up. Now, of course, the fact that the generation after me just happened to be an absolutely awesome generation certainly made that easier. So, when it's our time to change the world and create a better future for generations after us, the only thing we should tell them is, yes, you guys have it better than anyone by historical standards. But no, you shouldn't feel like you owe us anything for that. That is simply how it should be. And that is what you should do for generations after you as well.